How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Runaway Train Sports Podcast. I am your host, Dakota, or Boiler in Texas on most social media platforms. And we are here to talk about the Iowa Hawkeyes. Purdue travels to Iowa City this weekend to take on the Hawks. And I don't know why I called them the Hawks, I'm not going to lie. To take on the Hawkeyes in a game that suddenly, after just a couple of weeks after watching Iowa, went from probably a less than stellar potential of Purdue winning to suddenly looking a little bit spicy and suddenly looking maybe more winnable than we thought. Iowa as a team obviously is exactly who we thought they were going into this season. A team that is very, very good on defense, but really struggles on offense. And you don't really have to look too much further than their stats to prove it. But first, let's go ahead and take a brief look at the matchup itself. If you believe ESPN and their matchup predictor, they have Iowa as a 68% chance to win, Purdue at 32%. And while I do find it hard to really disagree with that too much, this game really is, I think, more of a toss-up than it might be anyway. The last few years, Purdue obviously has had a penchant for taking down Iowa in moments and times when they might not have been able to anyway. Of course, the Hawkeye killer David Bell no longer here, obviously. Purdue does just for whatever reason run a system, or at least I just threw my water on the ground. It has run a system under former head coach Jeff Brom that really just exploits all of the things that Iowa doesn't like on defense, particularly taking the lid off of the defense. Iowa plays very tight coverage and very sound defense, but if you can take the top of it, we've seen more than recently in the last handful of years that if you can get over the top of these DBs with speed and quickness, I bet you can tell where I'm going with this. That sometimes good things can happen, and I think this team could potentially have some of those guys that could help us take the lid off the defense and give Purdue an opportunity. Sorry about that. Picked up my water. But let's go ahead. Let's take a look at the numbers for Iowa. We're going to go ahead and use this opportunity to mention Cade McNamara, injured during their most recent game against Michigan State, confirmed that he'll be out for the remaining of the year. Obviously, we don't want that, no matter who it is or where they play. And so, Cade, for all of us here at the Runaway Train Sports Podcast, we wish you all of the best in recovery, and hopefully that's you can come back. I think I saw that he may plan on coming back again for another year at Iowa, so we'll have to wait and see. And so the quarterbacking duties fall to Deacon Hill. I think a much different type of quarterback, and the backup to Cade McNamara this season. He played pretty much a majority of the Michigan State game after Cade went down. I believe it was in the first quarter, but I know it was pretty early in this one. Iowa obviously went on to win that game against Michigan State on a Cooper DeJean punt return. I think it was a 70-yard punt return there with only a few minutes left to put them at the final margin. And so it's going to be interesting to see. Deacon Hill obviously stepped in and did what he needed to do to get a win. That said, not a lot of it really involves offense. And so that, I think, is going to be the biggest thing Iowa has to contend with going into this game with Purdue. So far on the season, Deacon Hill, obviously in extremely limited capacity and game time, has thrown for 15 completions on 35 attempts for 164 yards, a completion percentage of just under 43%, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and he's taken 2 sacks. I've heard a lot from Iowa people on Twitter that says that Deacon Hill actually might be a better passer in terms of arm strength, but of course that really comes with the next question of, but how's his accuracy? I don't think that there's really a big enough sample size to really say exactly what we're going to get from him, but he is, I think I saw 6'5", 260 something. And so he is a big dude who I don't think is going to obviously get out of the pocket and beat you with his legs. And so I think this actually sets up pretty well for Purdue in an offense like Iowa's that just doesn't really throw the ball that often, or really care about throwing the ball that often, or really care about offense or points coming from the offense. I don't know. this is going to get interesting. This is going to be all about playing. I said this on Twitter as well. That if we can, and by we, I mean Purdue, go in and play defensively sound football, I think we give ourselves a very good opportunity to come out with a win. Obviously, that's a big if. That's a big something that is going to require Purdue's offense to beat probably one of the better defenses that they'll play this entire year, maybe outside of the Ohio State and Michigan games. And it's going to take a group effort. The best thing that I could say about that particular challenge going into this game against Iowa is that we saw probably Purdue's most complete offensive game last week against Illinois. And now, obviously, that was Illinois. Illinois is definitely not one of them. Definitely, I think I saw that they've actually moved into the worst defense in the Big Ten. And so take it all with a grain of salt. But what it can do, even if it isn't against a quality defense, it can, improve your confidence as a unit. We saw some changes being made on the sideline. Coach Ryan Walters moving the coordinators up into the box, kind of moving around which coordinators were where. I think that proved to be very fruitful. And then we also heard, I heard it was the whole game. I've heard it was just the second half, but Coach Ryan Walters also taking over the play calling duties for the defense. And we also then saw probably Purdue's most complete defensive game as well. And so honestly, this weekend is going to be more telling for more reasons than one. But I say this, if, and again, is a big if, Purdue can continue on that same trajectory they were showing against Illinois, I think all of a sudden this game becomes very winnable against a team that if you can get out to somehow to a 2-score lead, I think it might just be too much, and it honestly could be a very close game, or it could just be Iowa running over us all afternoon, and that being that. Who really knows? I kind of just went off on a tangent there. I basically said everything I wanted to say, but let's keep looking at the stats. I think LaShawn Williams is the leading rusher for the Hawkeyes at this point, 37 carries for 211 yards. He does have a long of 53. Obviously, the competition needs to be taken into account. I can't remember. I've seen reports that he might have been one of the people who was hurt. I think he was maybe the starter the beginning of the season. I can't remember off the top of my head, and I'm not going to take the time to look it up. I'm sorry. I do not claim to be the most factual person here. But I do know that their starting running back did not play against Michigan State, but I think I saw that he was expected to play against Purdue. So that is something to keep an eye on. But that said, even as a team so far this year, with sack yardage taken into account, Iowa's only run for 535 yards on the season. I think that's a little outside the norm that we might have expected to see at this point. For reference, Purdue has rushed for 751 yards this year. I am extremely surprised to see that disparity. If you want to continue to look at offensive disparity, we can look at the receivers. Eric All, the tight end, one of two tight ends who are leading the Hawkeyes in receiving yards. Eric All, 14 receptions, 183 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Luke Lakey, pronunciation, I apologize, 10 receptions for 131 yards as well. Everyone else 80 yards or below. Iowa has thrown for 669 yards as a team. And again, in comparison, Purdue has thrown for 1,244 receiving yards this year. And so if you're just looking at the offense, it's very clear that, the fact that Brian Ferentz has this clause and this demand that he hit 25 points per game is obviously very badly needed. I mean, they barely have they almost have 1,200 total yards of offense this year, both receiving and rushing. And Purdue has 1,244 passing yards on its own and 750 rushing yards. And so in terms of offenses, obviously, I think Purdue has very much the leg up. But I think that definitely is by design. I don't think Iowa is at all worried about their offense, and they definitely aren't worried about putting up gaudy numbers. That is for sure. Looking at the kicking game, Iowa's kicker, Drew Stevens, is a perfect 100%, 11 of 11 on extra points, and he is 8 of 9 on field goals, with his lone miss coming between 40 and 50 yards. And I can read this right. Yes, between 40 and 50 yards. His long on the season is 53. Definitely a solid option. But Iowa always has a good special teams situation, so definitely something to keep an eye on. Obviously, Iowa, like I mentioned, isn't worried about scoring touchdowns all the time. And I'm pretty sure that if Kirk Ferentz could win a game 3-0, he absolutely would, and he probably would take the most joy possible out of doing that. Now, looking over at the defense, this is obviously where Iowa gets the job done, as it says. Their defense has been extremely good so far this year. They've, in terms of turnovers, they've forced three fumbles. They've recovered 2 of them. They have, where are the interceptions? They have 5 total interceptions as a team so far. And what else? They also have a defensive touchdown. I can't remember which game that was, but I feel like I remember it. They have a defensive touchdown. They have 2 forced fumbles, 5 interceptions, and only 3 sacks on the year, which I actually find kind of interesting. When you hear about Iowa and them being defensively minded, I kind of expected their sack numbers to be higher. Again, for reference, Purdue has 17 sacks on the year. And so the fact that Iowa apparently cannot get to the quarterback, I think raises a lot of questions about what their backfield and defensive secondary, their secondary and linebacking core has really had to do this year. This is so interesting to say the least. It's an odd thing to look at Iowa, who's 4-1 and probably one of the favorites in the West, probably second to Wisconsin, and just look at their stats and just not be particularly impressed with really any of them, with really any of it. I don't understand how Iowa operates like this. And I've seen a lot of people talk about it, and I'm kind of coming to the same realization looking at the stats just on paper right here, that it really I don't know how they do it. I mean, the Iowa's probably going to win between 8 and 9 games in the regular season this year, unless obviously the loss of McNamara proves a little bit more disastrous than maybe initially thought. Maybe Deacon Hill isn't ready. Maybe they lose a few more. But I mean, they're going to go to a bowl in a system that isn't designed to score on offense and is reliant entirely on special teams and defensive scores really to put up the big number of points. One place Iowa is absolutely elite, though, is the punting game. Iowa averages 46.2 yards per punt, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, what are we talking about? It's elite. Their punter should be drafted, probably will be drafted, and if Iowa looks at an opportunity to punt and try and pin you deep, they will absolutely take that. If Kirk could punt on 3rd down and get away with it, I'm sure he also probably would try that at least once. So let's look at the key points and the key things for Purdue to take down Iowa this weekend in Iowa City. Obviously, number 1, Purdue's got to score points. I think this is definitely something that Purdue is definitely capable of doing. Like I mentioned earlier, we saw against Illinois that Purdue is absolutely capable of putting up points, putting up efficient offensive drives, and really, finding success on offense. But can you do it against one of the better defenses in the Big Ten rather than the worst defense in the Big Ten? That is going to be the big question. If Hudson Card can get rolling through the air, I think Tyrone Tracy Jr. is going to be a little fired up to go back to Iowa and try and put up a good performance after we saw him absolutely, I think, take firm hold of the number 1 running back role in this Purdue offense. Obviously, I think Devin Mockabee is still going to be heavily featured. It's definitely a tandem of running backs, but I think Tyrone Tracy is going to come out a little more fired up. He obviously had his 100-yard rushing game with a touchdown as well against Illinois. I think he'll continue to continue to get his, and I think Devin will get his moments as well. But But might come down entirely to is Purdue going to be able to put together not necessarily like really long sustained drives, but sustained offensive drives and come away with points. If you get into a defensive struggle with Iowa, Purdue is going to lose. Purdue, I just don't think has the depth and ability and cohesiveness on defense right now that Iowa does to really come out of a defensive slugfest. I think Purdue is going to have to put up at least 24 points, 24 points to feel good about this one. But even then, it's all going to come down to my second point. Can Purdue's defense stymie an Iowa offense that refuses to try and put up good offensive games? If we see the same defense that we saw against Illinois, I think Purdue comes away pretty cleanly in this game. I think it may just come down to the depth on defense, which I think Iowa has the win there, which is why the offense needs to help the defense out by forcing Iowa into play a game they don't want to, which is trying to come from behind and have success on offense on a side of the ball that they just aren't focused on. That's all you can say. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen Iowa try and win games teens to teens and win by punting 17 times in a single game. I think this is going to come down to who can have long sustained drive on offense, can consistently put up points, and who can get the necessary stops and get off the field on defense. Iowa more than willing to get off the field on third down if Purdue can play nice, sound defense, not get lost. I do definitely feel a lot better about Deacon Hill, who definitely looks more like a traditional pocket passer with a huge arm than a runner. That doesn't mean that they aren't going to try and test Purdue, who is obviously shown a propensity for kind of losing the quarterback in those moments. But at the same time, I think this definitely bodes much better if Purdue can cover over the middle with the cover of the tight ends, two tight ends leading Iowa in receiving yards. If we can do that, I mean, I'm obviously okay. Let's just cut to it, right? If Purdue plays perfectly, Purdue's going to win. Do I think Purdue can do well enough on defense to come away with a win at Iowa? Absolutely. Do I think that Purdue is capable of playing the offensive game that we expect to be able to win at Iowa? Yes, I do. I think Deion Burks and Tyrone Tracy, for that matter, provide the speed that Purdue might need on offense to make stuff happen. I think Devin Mackey provides that that 1-2 punch with Tyrone Tracy Jr. in the running game to kind of give a mixed up look here and there. I think Hudson Card has the arm to kind of keep Iowa honest, which might need to be what happens more than anything. Purdue can't. I don't think Purdue can get pass happy and probably come away feeling good about this one. Purdue needs to stay balanced, like we saw against Illinois, and they need to make the plays they need to make and not make those big mistakes. It's been a moment here or there for the last 3 games in a row where a turnover really just seems to come at the worst possible moment. And if that happens against a team like Iowa, they will make you pay with a defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown. Purdue's going to have to play 4 quarters of very solid, fundamental football. And if they can do that, I think there's a very good chance that Purdue walks into Iowa City and comes out with a W. This game is on Peacock, the 2:30 p.m. Central slot, 3:30 Eastern. I'm interested to hear what you guys think. You can let me know down in the comment section below if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening to this on your favorite podcasting app. Go ahead, tweet at me, Instagram me, Threads me, Blue Sky me, whatever social media platform you want to use. Go ahead, tag me and tell me what you think. This game, I was not expecting a win in this game more than a few weeks ago. But looking at the game now and what this Iowa team really is this year, man, if Purdue goes into Iowa City and looks competitive and really just plays hard and Purdue just loses, I think I can live with that. What I don't want to see is a Syracuse-esque game where Purdue shoots himself in the foot 5, 6, 7 times and just can't seem to get over the hump. Now, would I be disappointed if Purdue loses this game? Absolutely. Is the season over? All of a sudden, Purdue beats a pretty bad, overmatched Illinois team 44-19 and goes on the road and loses to Iowa? No, I don't think so. Now, if Purdue pulls a Penn State from like last year where they have the game in hand and then just find a way to lose it at the death, yeah, that'll probably be a little annoying, but I think we'd all live with it in the end. That said, man, do I want to give an official prediction? Do I want to give an official prediction for this weekend, even though I've kind of already teased it on Twitter? Yeah, let's do it. I am predicting a Purdue win, 24-14, over Iowa this weekend. As we all know, an eternal optimist when it comes to Purdue sports in general. I believe that Purdue is going to continue the momentum they gained against Illinois. I tell you what, a big thing, I'm just going to tangent, put a pin in it, just hold on to that thought. I think the best thing that could have happened was Syracuse loss, Wisconsin loss, and then getting Illinois at home and then coming out and playing like they did. Absolutely dominating Illinois in the second half. A 21-point explosion in the third quarter, and then one more in the fourth quarter just to seal it. Purdue played fast on defense. They were all in the right spot. Obviously, they got lucky a little bit with some plays on defense, but they were efficient, balanced on offense. They were quick downhill on defense, making plays. If Purdue get any other game before going to Iowa, or specifically this Iowa, I don't know if I feel good. Like if we flop the Illinois and Wisconsin game, I probably feel a little worse about this, but I like the momentum. Purdue has momentum for the first time this year. I think Purdue has some momentum going on the road to a team that if they get behind, I don't think they have enough to come back and make enough plays on offense to do it. And they're going to rely on defense. And if they don't get that, they really struggle to score the ball. If Purdue can come out on offense and find success like they did against Illinois, I really, really like Purdue's chances here. Now, on the other side of the ball, Iowa, like I said, is not going to try and do anything too crazy. They're going to try and play, again, fundamentally sound offense, whatever that looks like, with a propensity to not make mistakes and to play field position. If Purdue can get off the field like Iowa is willing to do, I, again, really like Purdue's chances in this. If it's also in combination of the offense, it might really come down to just how good is Deacon Hill. Can Deacon Hill run the offense well enough against a Purdue team that isn't the best defensive team this year, but they've shown flashes, they've shown moments, and it really is just going to come down to that. I think Purdue's going to do it. Again, I'm an eternal optimist. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong wherever you feel free on reaching out to me, either here on YouTube or your favorite podcasting app. Go ahead and leave a rating and let me know what you think of the show. Hit that follow button over on all social media platforms. I'm going to get out of here. I've been ranting at you for 20-something odd minutes now. I really didn't mean for this to go this long. There's something about Iowa that just gets me going a little bit. Maybe it's just the lack of offense. Maybe it's the fact that Brian Ferentz gets to take advantage of defensive and special team scores. It gets me going. Very quickly, though, I do want to look around the Big Ten games this weekend just to see what's of interest. Anything interesting happening. Nebraska, Illinois on Friday is going to be a sicko's dream. I'm so looking forward to that, and I cannot wait to see that game. Maryland traveling to Ohio State, probably the game of the weekend in the Big Ten. Probably more so than Rutgers, Wisconsin. I think Rutgers, Wisconsin will be a great game. Maryland and Ohio State, definitely the game in the Big Ten this weekend. Northwestern's going to get their third win against Howard at home, and if they don't, that will be hilarious. Purdue obviously taking on Iowa in the night game. The lone night game, Michigan at Minnesota. Michigan probably walks that very similarly to how they did against Nebraska last weekend. Maryland, Ohio State, definitely the headliner here. I've been Dakota, Boiler in Texas on all social media platforms. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit subscribe. We do before and pre and post game shows for Purdue sports. I will be back again post Iowa game, one way or another. I can't wait to see what happens. Boiler up. I think Purdue comes out with a win, but we'll have to see. And as always, boiler up, hammer down, Hail Purdue.